Smooth 98.1. Here we are for Smooth Breakfast from 6 to 10. Victor Peppo.
And Shopware Martins. Now, remember, you can be part of the show by sending in messages on WhatsApp. It's 0809
Yes, and of course, for the next half hour here on Smooth Breakfast, it is freshly pressed, the part of the show where we go deep on news analysis. And joining us for the digging into what's going on the Nigerian front, we have got Mr. C in the studio. Good morning, Mr. C.
Good morning, Shokwe. Good morning, Victor.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, Lagos.
Now, Mr. C, we've got some pretty big news that we're going to be going through, and we want your thoughts, we want your questions, we want your reaction. So send your WhatsApp messages in to 0809 440 981. You can also tweet at us. We are at Smooth981FM, and you can use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981 once you tag us. And of course, we're streaming live on youtube.com/Smooth981FM Lagos. Feel free to leave your comments up on that live stream. We'll get it, we'll read it, we'll share your thoughts here on Freshly Pressed. Now, let's start off with what is arguably the biggest news from over the weekend from the Premium Times. Terrorism by guns. Defend yourselves, Zamfara government tells a resident, with the state government asking residents of the state to, and I quote, obtain guns to defend themselves against terrorists attacking defenseless citizens in the state for the past few years. Now, this was in a statement that was issued by the State Commissioners for Information, Ibrahim Dosara. And Mr. C, going through the full statement, there is so much to unpack from the fact that they've directed individuals to prepare and obtain guns. They especially spoken to the farmers, saying that they're ready to facilitate them securing basic weapons to defend themselves, that they'll be distributing 500 arms to each of the 19 emirates in the state, and that people should apply to the Commissioner of Police, who, by the way, has already responded saying, actually, you know what, the existing laws state that there is an embargo on firearms licenses. But then we also have not just that, in certain areas, petrol stations being shut with immediate effect, Okadas being banned in the state. What else? Markets as well, shut indefinitely. This is, can we safely say this is a state of emergency in Zamfara right now?
Clearly, it is. No, we must remember that Zamfara State has been one of the states that has been most affected by the activities of terrorists in Nigeria. Now, incidentally, they're not the first state to take this measure. Katsina State was the first. Governor Masari of Katsina State had advised residents of Katsina State to begin to prepare to arm themselves, to defend themselves from armed assailants, from terrorists. Now, why are these two states making these pronouncements? For whatever reason or set of reasons, the state security agencies have been unable to protect the lives and properties of people resident in both states.
For Governor Matawalle to come out and say that this insecurity in the northwest region of Nigeria has become an existential threat says it all.
Clearly, now we must remember that in Zamfara, in Katsina, and even Niger State, there are portions of each of these states that are controlled by terrorists. For whatever reason, the police, Nigerian police force is overwhelmed, and it's clear why they're overwhelmed. They're underfunded, under-equipped, morale is at an all-time low. The military agency, the army is overstretched all over Nigeria, conducting several simultaneous operations, which they're not meant to do in the first place. So the Zamfara state governor is literally witnessing his state dying before his very eyes. There's little or no economic activity going on. And you must remember that sometime last year, they shut down telecom services in Zamfara and Katsina.
Mm.
It didn't yield the desired result because the terrorists resorted to using the phones of their victims or using satellite phones or using phones registered in Niger or Chad. So for a governor or for a state to get to this point, it speaks to the general sense of helplessness, the general state of frustration with the existing security setup in Nigeria. And it will increase the clamor for state police.
But
The
not just that, though, it speaks to a failed state.
mm,
At this point, if we have security agencies unable to contain the threat within our borders, within the borders of the different states, Does that not speak to a failed state?
Well, I wouldn't say it speaks to a failed state exactly, but it clearly speaks to a state that is failing steadily. Now, why have the terrorists gotten inroads? Because the state actors, for whatever reason, have been unable to perform their civic duties and obligations to the citizens, which includes protecting their lives and properties. Now, these terrorists extract a tax from communities they've taken over, and it's more like a protection tax from similar to the criminal world. You pay the tax to the people who ordinarily should attack you, and then you're not attacked. And then they
Well,
allow
it's
you to carry on economic.
protection.
Yes, it's a
That is what it
protection
is, a
fee.
protection racket.
Yeah, when you talk about protection of life and properties, that's why we have the police in Nigeria looking at our Nigerian constitution. Now, legally, this is the big question. We've asked this question over and over again. Should citizens be made to carry arms? Looking at the United States, for
So
instance.
we're getting to that point. The argument is getting stronger by the day. I'd initially disagreed with Cheta on this matter because Cheta is clearly for people should be allowed to carry guns. Now, I'm beginning to tilt more to his position, and this is the reason. If the people who are sanctioned and licensed by the state to protect lives are for whatever reason unable to do so, should I let go of my life without even putting up a fight? Now, two, if the terrorist knows that they're coming into a community where people might be armed, the first human instinct is to preserve one's life. I'm not sure many of them will want to embark on such a mission unless it is a suicide mission. They do not intend to return alive. But it is better to have a fighting chance of protecting yourself and your loved ones than allowing terrorists to attack unarmed and defenseless civilians. Then the politicians come out and say they are sorry, they regret the, the unnecessary attack, and then they pledge to bring the culprits to book, and that is the end of the story.
Now, we've heard from the Katsina State Governor. We've heard from Benue State Governor as well. Um, uh, both also directing citizens to arm themselves. Now, when Katsina State Governor said made this pronouncement, he said something and that really struck. And what he said was, people need to get rid of that mistake. And I'm paraphrasing here. People need to get rid of that mistaken assumption that security is solely resides with the government, that now it's a people issue as well. And this was while he was saying, arm yourselves. What would you say to that?
Okay, so I want to disagree. In an ideal state, in an ideal society, security still remains the business of the government. It still remains the business of the state. Yes, the community can work with them, but it is not the primary duty of the citizens to be involved in security matters. Now, even in the US, with people being allowed to buy firearms, to buy ammunition, it is still the duty of the various police departments in the various cities, National Guard, the FBI, to maintain security.
Now, very quickly, just finally, talking about this now, I wanted to get your take on what the state commissioner of police said, Ayuba Elkana, saying that the embargo on firearms licenses is still in force and that the police have stopped issuing licenses to citizens who wish to own guns. Now, the fact that Governor Matawali is approving this and the CP is coming out to say this, obviously now we're seeing the tension and the tussle that goes on here. How can that, legally speaking, be resolved?
So it's very simple. This is Nigeria, right? All the governor has to do is speak to the Inspector General of Police because the Commissioner of Police, believe it or not, still takes his instructions from Abuja, not from the governor.
Yes.
So
True.
all he has to do is speak to the IGP, and if the IGP proves difficult to understand, then he speaks to the president, and the president will then
But
instruct.
we know the stand of Mr. President on this proliferation of firearms. It's been on. Even the National Assembly are saying we have a lot of small firearms in possessions illegally in Nigeria. They're trying to put that down. Just last week, we saw the US also sent a bill to the president on gun controls, while others are trying to control theirs. We are saying we should arm.
No, but I think it's double standards for the president to say he's concerned about the proliferation of small arms, and he's not concerned about wiping out the terrorists who are causing the pain and the misery.
And at the end of the day, for me, just even talking about the proliferation of arms within the country and through the country as well, doesn't it speak to the same issue? If that is going on that and that cannot be stopped, that means that there's more arms in the
So,
country to go against the people.
so Shopper, final note. In one breath, the government is happy with terrorists holding arms and seems uh, unwilling or unable to do anything
Are
about
they
it.
happy?
But in another breath, they are determined not to let innocent civilians be in a position to defend themselves. Makes no sense.
Well, we can't speak to the government's emotional state on this. But let's take a look at your messages coming in on 0809 440 9814 for WhatsApp. Dami from Ikorodu says the Samvara state government telling residents to buy guns against groups that carry anti tank and anti aircraft weapons. Okay, then. Whilst Jerry says, are you guys talking? Please, are you guys talking about Nigeria? It can't be. The president the other day said the security situation is better now. Wow, I can't believe all of this is happening in our country.
Well, on Zamfara, advocating for citizens' right to own guns is not a great idea. How do we regulate these guns? It is time for state police. It worked in Anambra State. Local vigilantes. The same model should be adopted across the board. And Jim says when terrorists are extracting taxes, I wonder what else remains for the state to fail. All right, let's keep this going. Mr. C, in about 2 minutes, let's see if we can touch on this real quickly, taking it over to the southeastern part of the country where Army, Navy, DSS, police clear IPOP camps in Anambra, Enugu states, recover weapons. That's in from the Vanguard newspaper, by the way.
Okay, so very quickly, Victor. So this is commendable. Joint Security Team raided some IPOP hideouts and ESN. Now, ESN is the Eastern Security Network, which is believed to be the military wing of IPOP, and cleared criminals and recovered weapons and cars. Now, I'm not against ideologies, I'm not against thoughts, school of thoughts, but I'm against armed struggles that are illegal and unlawful. IPOB, if you want to campaign for Biafra, you want to campaign for Biafra state, that's fine. But to carry arms and engage in criminal activity, wrong. That is not supportable. Now, the security teams should continue to carry out these operations because they're criminals masquerading and hiding under certain groups to perpetrate criminal activities, and that has to stop. So, kudos to the security agencies. Once again, they've gotten something right, and we hope that this will be a continued and sustained push to rid the Southeast, particularly of criminal elements and criminal gangs.
Yes, the Southeast. Okay, Vanguard News now. Why NERC's 5,000 megawatt July 1st target is unrealistic, according to the GenCos, the generation company, saying that for the 5,000 megawatt supply to happen, well, the government has to guarantee gas supply to the power plants and also pay up their debts that are being that they're owing to the GenCos to facilitate the repairs of units in the power plants. We heard from the executive secretary of the Association of Power Generation Companies, APGC, Dr. Joy Ogaji, who said the government, through the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company, NBET, needs to provide a letter of credit to the GenCos in order to guarantee gas supply, which is the only way they're saying that we're going to get this light that we keep talking about by the deadline of July 1st. Mrs. C, what say you?
Okay, thank you, Shokman. So let's quickly start. For those who haven't been following this story or don't understand how the power sector works, our power sector is divided into three broad categories. You have the generating companies that generate the power via thermal sources, via hydro sources, via gas. You then have the transmission company that collects the power generated and then gives it to the distribution companies. That's it. Examples, your EKDC or Ikeja Disco. That's how the chain works. Now, the gas companies, especially the ones that are powered by gas, the Gencos that are powered by gas receive their gas from gas companies. Now, what has happened in the past is we've used a best endeavor approach, but we've clearly seen that is not working. So we've moved to a new arrangement, which from the 1st of January is 1st of July is designed to guarantee a minimum of 5,000 megawatts generated.
The stick approach
Yes,
to power generation, transmission, and distribution.
correct. So, which is meant to ensure that 5,000 megawatts or 5 gigawatts is generated, transmitted, and distributed on a daily basis. Now, the Gencos have come out to say that that date might be unrealistic if the following things are not done. Now, there are about 23 Gencos that use gas. Only five of them have active contracts with MBET, that is the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company, that guarantees the payments, the transactions that go on in the power sector. Now, they're saying that there's too much risk involved in the price of gas, especially given the Russia Ukraine conflict. Now, a listener would say, but wait, hold up. Nigeria is supposed to be a country with large gas reserves. Correct. However,
Untapped gas reserves at this point, though.
yeah, but even for the ones portion that has been tapped, a lot of it is sold abroad. Now, the portion that is left for domestic demand is inadequate. So gas has to be brought in. Now, the gas is indexed to the dollar, and then the Russia Ukraine crisis doesn't help matters. So the Gencos are saying two things. Some of our units have been damaged by previous power collapses, system failures, and this year alone we've had seven. So they're asking for money to fix the units that are bad, and then for the government to take over the risk around gas, get the NBET to issue a letter of credit or some letter of comfort to the gas companies so that the gas companies give them the gas and they will generate the 5,000 megawatts on a daily basis. Now, with all things Nigerian, they're saying this now. I don't know how long it would take the Ministry of Power to respond to this statement, given the warning that has been given. Because from our recent history, we tend more often than not to ignore warnings, wait for the event warned against to happen, and then we start scrambling around looking for quick fix solutions.
Are we reactive as a people, the government itself?
Well, the government will appear to be more reactive than proactive.
Okay, let's also stick this into the conversation. In from the Punch newspaper, Buhari approves releases 41.6 billion naira take-up grants for presidential power program. Now, he's approved the release of $100 million. That's about 41.6 billion naira at the official rate. You know, the official rate of 414.63. You know, that's what the banks are giving. This is a take-up grant for the Presidential Power Initiative (PPI). Let's take our minds back. The PPI initiative of the federal government was conceived during a meeting between Nigeria's president and German Chancellor Angela Merkel in August 2018. I would like to ask, with the further introduction of $100 million for our power sector, I mean for this power program, are we going to see an improved power distribution? Not about generation or but transmission basically. Are we going to see it improve? Are we going to see increase in the number of power hours of power supply across Nigeria?
Victor, sadly, I would say no, and I'll explain why. Due to years and decades of neglect in funding the power sector, Nigeria is miles behind even its African peers like South Africa and Egypt. Now, the World Bank, in a recent report, stated that the sum of 100 billion US dollars was required over the next 10 years to bring Nigeria to the level of its African peers. That is $10 billion a year.
Just a moment before we proceed again with the numbers. I want to bring this in. An article from the Vanguard newspaper of September 2015 said in the past 16 years, that's from Obasanjo, Yar'Adua, and Jonathan administrations, we spent about 2.8 trillion naira on electricity alone. Those three administrations. President Buhari came on board in 7 years. He spent about 1.8 trillion naira. An article from the Premium Times captures that on electricity alone. So if we look through from 1999 till now, we've spent over 5 trillion on electricity, and we've not made significant progress.
So the reason why significant progress hasn't been seen, especially during the first 15 or 16 years from 1999, is simple. You did not have a proper tariff in place, so your tariffs were not cost reflective. So it's literally throwing money away. Now all the subsidies in the power industry have apparently been removed if the Minister of Finance is correct. Still yet, more investments need to be made. The discos do not have the required amount of capital to fix and upgrade. Same thing with the Gencos who are looking for money to fix damaged units. So it is clear that the 100 million is a step in the right direction, but it's a very minute
$100 million.
$100 million. It's very minute given the fact that we need to spend 10 billion each year. So 100 million, what's the percentage of 100 million to 10 billion? Probably 1%.
Hmm.
We can clearly see that there is a lot of work to be done. And the bigger question is, where are we going to see $10 billion each year to fund only power? Now, clearly, you need the private sector in, but they're still not convinced that the circumstances around the power industry are ripe or correct for them to invest their money because they don't want to lose their money.
At the end of the day, when we talk about power and privatization, looking at the last privatization, which was not a full privatization, don't you think that would be also a deterrent to potential investors?
So the last privatization exercise in the power industry could have been handled a lot better. It could have been handled differently. So they took loans to acquire these assets. Some of them claim they didn't get to see these assets until months later and did not have the true picture of what they were buying. In the interim, the loans, which were denominated in foreign currency, had already started running and incurring interest. So they really met a picture that was different from the ones painted to them when they were bidding. Now, there's no gainsaying that we need to invest in the power sector. We need to invest, explore other forms, renewable sources of energy. However, it all requires money. And you have to create the right framework. Your regulatory landscape must be clear. It mustn't be unambiguous. It mustn't be shaky. The ability to bring in forex and take it out must be unhindered, it must be unrestricted. To do that, you need to have a unified conversion rate. We don't have that yet. Now, the final point, campaigns start in September. The candidates will be out on the campaign trail. These are some of the questions Nigerians need to ask them, and they need to receive detailed answers that make sense.
At the end of the day, when it comes to privatization, there's no investor in the world that's willing to accept a poison chalice. All right, let's take a look at this next article coming in from the Punch newspaper. Immigration dismisses organ donors' underage claim. Ebony and Dixon back Ekweramadu. So the Nigerian Immigration Service coming out to state that it followed due process in issuing the Nigerian passport to one certain Mr. David Wamini, who was allegedly trafficked to the United Kingdom. We heard from the Controller General of the NIS, Mr. Idris Jerry, at a press conference yesterday, saying that he is 21 according to the records that they have, and that to support his application, he presented all necessary documents from birth certificate to national identification number and a certificate of origin issued by Ebonyi State Government Liaison Office in Abuja, as well as a guarantor's form that was duly signed. One of the issues in the what was a huge story coming in from the UK with regards to our former Deputy Senate President Ike Ekweremadu and his wife, that this happened. And yeah, what would you say to this new information?
Okay, so this story, this response came out of one of the issues, like you rightly pointed out, that emerged from the story last week where a former deputy senate president and his wife were arrested by the British authorities on allegations of child organ trafficking. Now, one of the issues that came out was a dispute or a contention as to the real age of the proposed donor. Some accounts had it at 15, some other accounts had it at 21, and a passport used was procured and used for him to travel to the United Kingdom. So the question then arose, okay, the people who issued, the agency that issued the passport, what age was given to you? And is this a valid passport? So they've confirmed it is a valid passport. At the point of application, the applicant or the holder of the passport submitted his NIN, submitted a birth certificate, which clearly indicates that he's at least 21.
Isn't it that the NIS is trying to clear its name? Because there were people who said, how could the NIS not know that it was a 15-year-old who was involved in this, organ donation process, and perhaps it was falsified, and that's why.
I think that's a stretch. The NIS will not know what you want to use the passport for. They just know that you want a
Because there were
passport to
people who
travel.
were saying that perhaps since, I mean, the report came out that the boy was 15, that the NIS should have known that, oh, they're trying to falsify these passports. Maybe that's why they're coming out with this statement.
Well, so the people who say the boy is 15, what's the material? What's the evidence? Now, the agency responsible for issuing the travel documents on behalf of Nigerian citizens has said that based on the documents that were submitted, he's 21. But that really doesn't affect, that's one leg of the bigger case. The bigger case is he has to clearly prove to the British authorities that he wasn't involved in organ trafficking. And I've had a look at the act with which he's been charged. And it clearly states for you to receive an organ donation from a non relative, you must show why you need him above other people. Two, there must be no promise of a monetary inducement. He also has to clear that hurdle. Did you promise him money or anything material apart from money? That is a question only the former deputy senate president and his wife can answer. And if they're unable to answer these questions, it will be a very tough case for them and they're likely to be found guilty.
All right, let's look through some of your messages. Yinka Bolu, referring to the power supply being, I mean, steady improved by July 1, says that Joy lady should be arrested. The July 1 power supply statement was made about 2 weeks ago, which will coincide with the upward tariff review. When that statement was made, she didn't come out to, knock the statement. Now, 5 days to the D-Day, she's telling us that it can't happen. I lived in Zamfara for the year between 2008 and 9, and back then it was safe. But some of us knew it was going to get to this. There are a lot of ungoverned spaces in Zamfara, and there's no way the security operatives can manage it. Between Katsina and Zamfara, there is Funta and Safe, and that's a lot of large, senseless space. So why are people there? Empty these spaces and let's have a clear sight of where to, rain fire and brimstone on. Next, why do we have people living close to the highways? These things we need to look at. These are things we need to look at. In
Well, I
Kabulu.
know that in Safi that they had the government has ordered the immediate closure of all markets indefinitely. Yeah, one of those. So let's take a look at more messages. This one in from Kunle Bangboye, who says, well, these governors sometimes speak with two sides. The APC governors, he says, sometimes speak with two sides of their mouths. Okay, going forward, he says they sing the praises of the president for his performance in public and then return to their states to ask citizens to carry weapons to defend themselves due to security failure. Well, to that, Kunle, I would say the governors have been pretty vocal about what the insecurity situation in their states. And if you remember, also all the governors had come together as part of the governors forum to decry the really what is now unmanageable levels of insecurity within the nation, and had said that something must be done about it. And they had actually tendered an apology and said that going forward they are going to come out and they're going to do come harder at this. So there is that.
Otunuga comes in, says over 5 trillion naira spent on power since civilian administration came in. That is about 35 billion naira at the rate of 140 naira to a dollar. We'll never get results on this and other national issues like insecurity until we do the needful, which is restructuring of the country. And BDA sends a message. It says, first of all, was it not the Zamfara governor that brought like 100 luxury SUVs for the local chiefs? Why didn't he use these vehicles? Why did he buy these vehicles as additional funding for the police, or even buy or subsidize assault rifles for the citizens? Now he's making statements not good enough. Why aren't you analyzing the issue of the VP candidates searching for the different political power? Okay, thank you very much for that
Thank you for
one.
your advice, B. All right, moving on. We've got this one. MT from Yaba says a key factor is transmission, which needs to be redesigned from central to regionalized transmission with pockets of industrial estates, in my view. Also, we need PPP for improved service with changes in current policies within the sector. And Victor Schill says federal government spent 5 trillion on power since 1999, but blew over 4 trillion on subsidy in January between January and June of 2022.
Is
This is
that
called
accurate?
misplaced priority.
Mr. C, is it 4 trillion we spent on fuel subsidy in this year alone?
No, we've done more than that.
Yeah,
It's
no.
closer. It's north of 6 trillion.
There
Actually,
you go. Okay, and we have come to the end of the show. Of course, you can continue the conversation with us. We are at Smooth90FM on Twitter, and Mr. C is French on social media. He is at Monsieur C, and there is three E's after the C, so go find him at Monsieur C. Thank you very much, Mr. C, for joining us for today's Freshly Pressed. And coming up, coming up, it's sports inside the locker room at 8:15. Mr. President.
And what is not still working?
Thank you, YouTube. Thank you, Mr. C. Goodbye, YouTube.